Welcome back. Jay Fagan here again with the Maddox Group and our home buying seminar, the opportunity, challenges, benefits, and pitfalls of homeownership for new homeowners. In this session, session 5, we're going to have some real tax talk, real math for the qualified homebuyer, talking through the various scenarios that you could consider maybe more realistic to your particular needs. They're all based off real clients who we've worked with, names redacted for their protection, of course, and to give you a chance to see what real life math actually looks like. And of course, the last scenario I'm going to give you is, again, a real life scenario, but the less than ideal client, the less than perfect situation, so that you can see what across the spectrum homeownership can be in 2025. Now, we're about to dive into some detailed math of homeownership, budgeting, and taxes. I set this up for its own session because some of this can be pretty dry. I'm going to try and make it as enjoyable as I can, but I want you to be able to take the time, turn the video off if you like, and really read into the particulars, take a look at how each of these scenarios might apply to you. The examples, of course, we are going to share are based on real life taxpayers. However, they're not expected to represent all situations. Remember to talk through your needs and your opportunities with your advisors. Should you not have advisors to walk this journey with you, my team is ready and willing to step in and ensure you will never walk alone. What does this look like in practice? As I've said before, home ownership isn't a tax savings strategy. Spending a whole dollar to save a quarter is not good financial sense. But if you need to have a mortgage, if it makes sense for you to buy a home, these are some of the advantages that you should take and apply in your life. Just be aware that they're not a strategy overall. They come with a cost. But the cost in having homeownership is offset by the security, stability, the peace of mind that you have by owning your own home. And if it makes sense in your life to do it, pull the trigger and make it happen. In our first scenario, typical Americana, Bob and Joan have 2 kiddos, Billy and Janie. They make a healthy middle-class income. They're buying a reasonable 3-bedroom home in an established neighborhood. Investing in their home saves them some $13,000 in income taxes in the first year. And over a 7 to 10 year period, they can reasonably expect property appreciation and tax savings to result in a positive rate of return and a successful net investment. When we look to break this down, at $315,000 gross, they bought a house at $850,000. Again, we're looking at an ideal scenario of that 20% down. Their effective tax bracket before itemizing was just under 20%. Their effective tax bracket after itemizing is just under 5%. So there is a savings in income taxes, but they're going to have to spend over $58,000 to get that. Now that is $58,000 investment in their home and long-term capital gain and long-term security and stability. This is why we want to really reiterate in these scenarios, the cost of tax savings isn't necessarily a bad thing to do, but I wouldn't encourage you to go out and spend $58,000 just so you get $13,000 back. That's what I mean by it's not a tax strategy. It's a tax advantage to take care of while you're pursuing a life strategy. In our second scenario, we've got Thomas, our super dad. Thomas is the dad that every kid hopes for and other dads envy. Thomas runs a highly successful organization matching single prospective parents with kiddos that are seeking their forever home. As parents who adopted our 2 children and it completely transformed our life, Thomas is a scenario we're particularly warmly fond of. And if you've been considering adopting in your own life, I highly encourage it. I want you to be aware, as with many things in California, the costs of paradise aren't inexpensive. Adoption, the process, is not necessarily something I'd wish on my worst enemy, but the results, the outcome, just like homeownership, pay dividends. The greatest success I have in my life is being a father and a husband. And for those who want to pursue that, I highly encourage it. There's some great kiddos out there who need wonderful, loving parents and beautiful homes to grow up in. Now, Thomas, Julian, and Jenna are seeking space to stretch their wings and room for the kids to welcome their first dog. Thomas has found a comfortable fixer-upper outside of town on a little over an acre. There will be future investments to make this their dream home. This isn't perfect right now. However, together, these three are dedicating sweat equity and family togetherness to transforming their family tree forever. Again, here we're looking at a reasonable purchase, $600,000. If you're on the Central Coast of California, that's probably somewhere in Tuscadero, Santa Maria, North Monterey County, San Benito County, $480,000 mortgage. Again, we look at that effective tax bracket as a standard filer, just under 20%, fairly consistent in California. As an itemized filer, in this case, has had a household slightly over 16%. And while Thomas is going to save just under $7,000 in income taxes, he's going to be investing $39,000, almost $40,000 a year in this home and his family's future. Here we have our lovely newlyweds. Julie and Janice are creative, successful, and newly hitched lovebirds. Janice is reconnecting with her passion and talent for her art. Julie is supporting the new couple, while Janice builds up inventory for an upcoming gallery show. Their first home is just what they were looking for. Simple, in a good neighborhood, priced well with room for improvement, and key major items, the roof, floors, windows, have at least 15 years of useful life remaining. Julie and Janice's home investment isn't necessarily a great deal for their taxes. However, the security, resale value, and the power to make choices that are fully in their control, priceless. As a bonus, the spare bedroom and garage are perfect for Janice's creative endeavors. Happily for our dynamic duo, $150,000 a year on the California Central Coast still buys a great first home. See, here as you see, and we're looking at tax savings and the overall effective tax strategy, we've only got one income at this point. We'll potentially have some self-employed income down the road as the art takes off and Janice is able to build that business. That comes with its own opportunities in the tax code. But their home ownership, again, buying a very affordable home, a very lean home purchase on the Central Coast of California, maximizing the least possible mortgage they could swing, they're not saving much on their taxes. And they're spending a lot each year on owning that home. However, in their scenario, if we look at renting versus buying, and as rents have gone up in California and the process of renting in California is so much more of a challenge, it just made so much more sense for this lovely couple to buy their first home. In this scenario, being single isn't a barrier to success. Jessica is a successful, talented, and independent single professional. Jessica's law practice is kicking into high gear and she needs space to grow. Her first home ticks all the boxes. Her townhouse is within walking distance of the courthouse. She has a great first floor den to serve as her home office and room for her family and friends to visit without intruding into her own space. Buying wasn't without its obstacles. And someday soon, she's going to add some shutters for better privacy. Still, this is hers. She's building for her future. And the savings she's reaping in commuting, taxes, and office rent are helping Jessica achieve her goals faster each month. As you can see, interest payments to your lender really take a bite out of your cash flow. The best practice, whenever you can, is to treat your 30-year loan like a 15, paying extra each month toward the principal as you can, and paying off that home as swiftly as possible. Back when interest rates were 2% and 3%, that advice was deemed boomer talk. But as we've returned to historically normative interest rates, people are realizing, and you look at the overall tax scenario here and the real math, paying whole dollars to the bank when you have an opportunity to pay extra and get that bank out of your life just doesn't make a lot of sense. Owning your own dirt, it's a feeling like none other. Owning your own California dirt, well, that's just finer than frog hair split 4 ways. Here, in Jessica's case, again, a smart purchase, a little on the higher side for a single person to swing, but as a new lawyer, she has future growth. We talk about risk mitigation. This is the kind of thing we're talking about, where you know that you're moving into your peak earning years and you can withstand some of the risks that might unexpectedly crop up over time. $500,000 mortgage. Her effective tax bracket was nearly 16% as a single filer, standard filer. with the itemizations, she's still going to be out over $41,000 a year in this investment. She's going to save $11,000 in taxes, and it's going to save her just over 5% on her effective tax rate. Finally, we're going to talk about this kind of California average. This is what your general new home buyer looks like. They're not putting 20% down. They're buying more home than they may necessarily be able to swing right now. And they're picking up extra work to do it. So in this couple, who is kind of an amalgamation of an everyman couple that we see a lot of, they've got a W-2, they've got a side hustle. They may have two W-2s. They may have 3 W-2s. They're married. They've got at least 2 children. They may have grandma or grandpa living with them as well. This is often a multi-generational home. Overall income in this scenario is $300,000. Their adjusted gross income after retirement, self-employed health insurance, self-employed retirement contributions, qualified business income deductions is $243,000. So they're taking advantage of paying for all the things to future you on that side hustle, on that self-employment. They bought $1.2 million. They only had $60,000 down, a mortgage of $1,140,000. So they have PMI. They are not getting the full mortgage interest deduction. They're capped at $750,000. Their effective tax bracket as standard filers was just under 20%. Again, this is what we see very often. Their effective tax bracket as itemized filers saves them not quite 10 points. They're 11.86%. And they're putting $110,000 a year out. They are scraping to make this happen. They are hustling. This is not the picture perfect picket fence scenario. This is the real grind of what homeownership in high cost areas like California and New York coasts can look like. This is what homeownership can look like with different numbers, but for hardworking individuals across America who are just getting by paycheck to paycheck, but they don't want to invest in somebody else's property anymore. They want to invest in their own. This scenario is not without risk. And folks like this every day face challenges. But ultimately, they've made a choice to do whatever they can, as Dave Ramsey says, to live like no one else, so that later they and their children can live like no one else. And for that reason, I applaud them. We work with them and encourage them every chance that we get. So we've talked about the home buying opportunity, the budget, the benefits, the obstacles, and the real math of what actual home ownership scenarios look like. Thanks for sticking with us thus far. In our final session, session 6, we're going to talk about building your legacy, things to take care of each year and pay attention to, and the reason ultimately why you're making this investment and how it could pay off in the long term. So stick around.